Um, so we ended with 51, I think, last time. Let me know if this is right. So if anybody, any bishop, presbyter, or deacon abstains from the sacerdotal, anyone at all in the sacerdotal office abstain from marriage, meats, wines, or other things. We did this one, right? That was the last one. Okay. 52. If any bishop or presbyter shall refuse to welcome back anyone returning from sin, but on the contrary reject him, let him be deposed from office, since he grieves Christ, who said, there is joy over a single sinner who repenteth in heaven. So this is really important. Um, and of course, this would go for the priest too. If a priest has somebody who has sinned and fell away, and then they repent and want to come back, they must be allowed to come back into the church. Now, it's important to note that this does not mean that if someone repents, then all of the spiritual medicine, the epithemias that are given are then just erased or evaporated. This is not what it's saying. You with me? Because some people might say, oh, okay, he came back. No, this is talking about somebody who did not who was in sin, was reproved, was dealt with, would not repent, and then had to be excused and totally excommunicated. That person, when they come back, should be greeted with joy and gladness. That doesn't mean that there's not still going to be consequences. Maybe they have to be, at this time, they would have maybe had to stay outside and stay as like weepers or whatever, but still. So okay, 53. If any bishop, presbyter, deacon on the days of the feast will not partake of meat and wine because he loathes these things, and not on account of asceticism, let him be deposed from office on the ground that he has his own conscience seared and has become a cause of scandal for many. See, again, here we have a situation where somebody is self-righteous and thinking themselves to be righteous, and they just simply don't like these things. But they kind of put out there like, oh, they're super holy, and they won't partake of these things, meats, wines, and other things. It's going to cause people to stumble. Why is the bishop not eating? Why is he not? Is he, breaking the teaching of the apostles and setting some sort of a new standard in this kind of dualistic way? Also, like it's wanting to teach and avoid dualism. Like the flesh is bad, the spirit is good. We do what we have to do in the flesh, but oh, it's so bad. This is not the way it is. Ice cream is good when eaten in moderation and properly. Blueberries are good when eaten in moderation and done properly. Marriage is good when done properly and in the Christian an appropriate way. Sexual relationship with your husband and wife, this is good, done in the proper way. All of these things can be done in an inappropriate way, but it doesn't mean that those things are inappropriate. You with me? And so wine or meat is not inappropriate. Too much meat is bad, too much wine is bad, etc. So we do not want to start thinking in this Platonic way. 54. If any clergyman be caught eating in a tavern or in any restaurant where intoxicating beverages are served, let him be excommunicated, except only in case it happens to be at the wayside inn where he has put up for the night by necessity. So this is, these are really talking about like bars and clubs, really. So I don't think that this is talking about your family restaurant, Applebee's, that has a offers alcohol. Though it could be, because that's kind of in the middle, because the Applebee's does have like a place where you can come and sit at the bar. We are not supposed to be going to bars. We are not supposed to be going to clubs. It's just that simple. Sorry. But that doesn't mean that we can't drink. It's just that we are not supposed to be worldly. So what would that also tell us? Oh yeah, having beer parties and getting smashed like a lot of young people do. This is completely unacceptable. Of course, for bishops and presbyters. Um, uh, if any clergyman should insult a bishop, let him be deposed from office. For thou shalt not speak ill of thy people's rulers. So there you have it. It's very, very important not to speak ill of our bishops. 56, if any clergyman should insult a presbyter, that's a priest, or a deacon, let him be excommunicated. So if you are a reader or you are a chanter or you are any part of the servers of the church, an agnost who is like a candle bearer, anything like this, and you insult your clergyman, the remedy here is to be excommunicated. So it's serious. And again, I think this falls into the category of like the temporary excommunication. Let me see. Yeah, it's not like excommunicated, like put out of the church. It's just kind of like a punishment. It's a disciplinary thing. You don't talk bad about your bishop or priest. And if you do have an issue with them, it should be done discreetly and privately. I was listening to St. Porphyrios yesterday and the day before, which the book is one of John's favorite, Wounded by Love by St. Porphyrios. It's on Athonite audio if you have the ability to listen while you're doing stuff. It's so good. But in this one part, he was talking about, and this is in the second book, the first recording is 3 hours and like 50 minutes. The second recording, which is on his wisdom, is like 7 hours, so forth. But in the first part of it, he talks about never, ever, 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 ever saying anything bad about a priest. If you hear something bad, don't respond. He says, even if you see the priest doing something that is against the teaching of the church and the canons, pretend like you didn't see it and just say, and then move on, because how serious it is to be a priest and how serious it is to accuse a priest, and just let God deal with the priest and let the priest deal with the priest and the bishops deal with the priest. So anyways, that was, and he has the Spirit of God, or the apostle says, which I think I have the Spirit of God. And St. Porphyrios had the Spirit of God. And so we should take his advice, besides the fact that it's right here in the canons. If any clergyman jeers, fleers, or flouts, or contumeliously, contumeliously, or scurrilously, or derisively and mockingly scoffs or sneers at anyone who is lame or maimed or deaf or who is blind or who is crippled, let him be excommunicated. The same rule applies also to the layman. So absolutely no joking at all, no making fun, no teasing or anything. Anybody who has any sort of um, some struggle that is different than the most of the humans. Okay, so it's just very, very important that we do not make fun of anybody. Never. I remember when I was growing up, I had a learning disability. I had dyslexia, and um, I was I was in the LD class, but that's what they called it back in the 80s, the LD class. This is where if you couldn't read or couldn't speak or you had all sorts of problems, if somebody was retarded or handicapped, that's where you went. So that's where I spent all my elementary life. So we would do the Pledge of Allegiance. She would usually talk about, oh, it's Easter time or whatever. And we would do, and then like about 20 minutes after class started, then me and all the special students would leave, the special students, they say, and then we would go to these classes. And we just got made fun of all the time, and especially at home. My sister made fun of me all the time. Oh, you can't read. You're so stupid and all this stuff. And it just hurts your feelings so badly. And then I would do the same thing back. I would make fun of her and I would call her fat. So bad of me, you know. And so this is so as a parent, I never, if I heard my children making fun of each other, I never allowed that. I mean, they got in big trouble. They still did, I'm sure. They made fun of each other all sorts of times and when I wasn't there. But it's the same concept. It's just it's not worth it. And we need to be above that. Um, because we make fun of people out of pride because we're just trying to make ourselves feel better. Or we're just wicked and we just want to hurt somebody. Does everybody know the difference between wickedness and evil? Wicked act and evil. I know my children do, but you'll read and you'll have Greek scholars who debate about this, but I'm on the side that I'm obviously about to explain. And Eve, if you read in the Old Testament, you'll see that evil took place. Evil is usually some sort of an act or some sort of something that took place. So a tornado came and wiped out the building, it says, and the Lord allowed evil, you know, the Lord caused evil to happen and the building collapsed or something. Or somebody did evil to somebody. That's different than somebody being wicked. Somebody's being wicked is a description of their heart and their motives. Evil is, if somebody's doing evil, it's usually an outworking of wickedness, but it's not equated, you know, one to one. And it's important. You'll read, if you start looking at, as you're reading the scripture, just start reading, you'll be like, oh, that's interesting. There's a difference between wickedness and there's a difference between evil. And so he says, if you see an evil person, this is a person who does bad things to other people, mocks them, hurts them, laughs at them, slanders them, does this, has malice. If somebody is wicked, this is the state of their soul. They are followers of Satan, or their noose is just completely messed up. So that's just a sidelight. For whatever it's worth, it might be. And I will say to you, no, undoubtedly, some Greek scholar would be like, well, actually, Father Stephen, you're wrong, and here's why. But I disagree with them. Sorry. And that's a great thing about Greek because everybody debates everybody. And that's why it's not really good to waste so much time with it, because you can just read the general explanation and you'll do all right. It'll save your soul because it'll help you get right with God. Okay. If any bishop or presbyter neglects the clergy or the laity and fails to instruct them in piety, let him be excommunicated. Oof. But if he persists in his negligence and indolence, let him be deposed from office. Okay. So, and this is one of the reasons why, you know, I told you that I started doing those little micro homilies on the feast days, because I was reminded in a book and by one of the bishops when he was talking, like, you have to preach a homily because you have to instruct them. I think that this command goes way further than the homily. This is why education in this parish is incredibly important, because how can you know how to live if you are not taught? And the apostles devoted themselves day and night to praying and to the studying of the Word of God and to teaching it. And that's the job of the bishop and the priest. The bishop and the priest are, in effect, they're the apostles. Like when you see a bishop or you see a priest, you should say, like, there's the apostle who lives amongst us. And the apostles taught. And that's why it's so serious, so serious. And the bishop or priest who does not teach is considered negligent and indolent. Indolence. Wow. And he should be deposed from office. He should be excommunicated. That means he should not serve or take communion for a while. But if he does not repent of this, then he should be removed from office. Serious. Okay. If any bishop or presbyter fails to supply necessities to any of the clergy in want, let him be excommunicated. If he persists, let him be deposed as having murdered his brother. Do you know that the teaching of the church and the teaching of the canons teach that we are supposed to be, oh, and this is also in Sirach and in the Wisdom of Solomon, I'm pretty sure that if we do not give our money or our time or our labors to help somebody who's in need, that we're called thieves and killers because we're not providing for the creation of God, the people of God, what they should have. This is why it's super important. This is why every parish, wherever you're at, listen, all you laity, if you're not at my parish, but you're somewhere else, then you need to do your utmost to support your priest and your deacon financially so that they can distribute the funds of the church so that if there's needy people in the church, they can be taken care of. So, of course, our bishops actually can't really provide us with any finances because the ROCOR is so utterly destitute financially. We have absolutely no money. And so because of it, they're not super rigid with us, like give us more, whatever. Like the Greeks and the Antiochians, they have a bunch of parishes, they have a bunch of wealthy people, and they're just rolling in the dough. They don't really give as much as they should, but they're rolling in the dough. ROCOR people don't give hardly at all. It's a total embarrassment. Um, Not even 10%. But uh, if they did, then maybe the bishops then could pay their priests, which would be more like them saying, like, okay, you guys pay your priest. But anyways, that's not the issue. The issue is the bishop and the priest paying their clergy. So if their people are doing something or need something provided for them, that they need to meet those needs. Also, it should be noted that it is the local church's responsibility to take care financially of those in the local church that cannot take care of themselves. For instance, if there's a young family that desires to have the husband and the wife have what we would call a traditional lifestyle, where the husband is the primary breadwinner and the wife stays home so that she can help raise the children, this means they're going to probably make much less income. So what does that mean? It means that the church needs to be aware of this, and the priest and the deacon and the treasurer needs to know that that family should still be encouraged to give at least 10%. But the church, if they're 20% behind on their budget, then the church should supply that 20%, and nobody should know. But they should be provided for it. That's, of course, the goal that we have in our parish. We haven't had to take care of any families yet, except for a couple of times where there was a close call. But at any rate, this should be the goal of every single parish. If you read the book of Acts, this is exactly what they did. They took care of their own, and there was nobody in need. Somebody's husband dies, then the church should provide for that household. That doesn't mean that the wife or the mom doesn't get some sort of employment under the umbrella and protection of the church. The church has some sort of, like, we want to have the bakery, or eventually we want to have a bulk food store, or we can have single mothers. Hopefully we have hundreds of single young people who did things that they shouldn't have in high school, and they have children, but they find Christ. That's the goal, that people find Christ. So we have to have some way of being able to provide for these sisters so that they can still be with their children when they're young. They can raise their children if they would like to homeschool, which of course we would suggest. We don't demand that, but we think that it's a better situation for everybody. But most people don't do it because they don't feel like they're capable, either financially or emotionally. So, but anyways, I would suggest to encourage you to just put that in your mind, and then it should give you a sense of the importance of your part. The church is not the priest, and the church is not the deacon. The church is every person. Every person is a part of the church, and everybody has a different role to play, but everybody really needs to play that role. Okay. 60. If anyone reads to the public in churches the books of impious writers bearing false inscriptions and purporting to be holy to the injury of laity and clergy, let him be deposed. This would be like if somebody was like, had actually, so the public was like the public gathering, maybe a time of teaching or whatever. But if somebody was going to read a book and they were like, oh, this is from Jeremiah or something, but it was actually a book from Plato and they were reading it. Oh, this is great. That person would get in major trouble because that is an impious book. You're not supposed to read stuff that is from people who are not, first off, not in the church, definitely, but also those who had been in the church but were kicked out as heretics should not be accepted. 61. If a charge of fornication or adultery or any other forbidden act be brought against a faithful one and be proved, let him not be promoted to the clergy. Now, this is the passage. This is the primary canon here. Why in a lot of instances in the old days, they used to not ordain people into the priesthood who had done things that they wish they wouldn't have done when they were young people before they got married. And the question is, does this mean if somebody was not a Christian, then that prohibits them from being a clergyman when they did these things? Well, it doesn't really say. And so it's good. The bishop can make that decision. But it says that this is brought against one of the faithful. So it definitely means if while somebody is faithful that this has happened, if it actually has happened, then they cannot do this. So don't do this if you're faithful. If you have done these things prior to your baptism, the bishop still may say, you know what, I don't think we're going to do this. Like when I was being examined, I was asked, were you a virgin before you got married? Did you do anything? Did you do this? Did you do that? And some bishops in Russia will not let somebody who is not a virgin before he got married become a clergyman, at least a priest. And the reason is because when you're a priest, the undescribable attacks that you get as a priest are only exacerbated by doing some of these things, and so there was a story that Brother Daniel told me that his bishop did ordain somebody and he knew of this canon, but he was like, it'll be okay. And he ordained somebody who had done some of these things before he got married. And this poor priest just was tormented out of his mind, almost went crazy and just struggled. And that bishop said he's never going to do it again. But this bishop is alive right now. Now, the norm today is that nobody even cares. Nobody's just like, let's just put people in. But I don't know. I don't know. I just think that it's such a scary thing that it's just something that should be seriously considered, for all involved, the bishop and for those who are being considered to this very serious and dangerous roles. But it doesn't, I think that you need to understand that there are many people who have put into this position have been faithful. And some people will say, well, what about the blessed Augustine or what about the blessed Ambrose or these other people? If this is actually a canon for those before, just because there was exceptions doesn't mean that everything should be an exception. We need to always understand that because just because saints did certain things, it doesn't mean that that's dogma of the church. Like there are a few transvestite women who snuck into men monasteries and they were considered saints later on in life, not because they broke the rules and broke the canons, but because their life was so righteous and they did certain things for the glory of God that they became canonized and their life had a certain principle that was so important that it needed to be taught to the whole church. So just because of this, just because a canon is broken doesn't mean like that should be the norm. But we leave that to God, and we leave that to the bishops. But there are many, many, many fabulous clergymen who, when they were not Orthodox Christians, did things that they regret, and they are doing just fine, at least from the outside. But you don't get to see inside of the head or the heart of the bishop or the priest. So, and neither do I, unless they share stuff with me. So 62. Here's an important one. If any clergyman, for fear of any human being, whether the latter be a Jew or a Greek or a heretic, should deny the name of Christ, let him be cast out and rejected. Listen, you need to understand that if you reject Christ, it is serious. And at this time, if you did that, you were out of the church. And there eventually were councils that were like, okay, the persecution was so bad, people did this, what should we do? And then they let them back in. Okay. But there was consequences. There was a very long penance, but it wasn't just like what you see today, people apostatizing, because they come to the church so fast, they get accepted without much catechism. They're not told or taught how serious life is as a Christian and how damnable it is to leave. And then they leave because whatever reason. If you do that, and if you do that as a clergy, you're just rejected. Or if any clergy deny the name of clergyman, let him be deposed. And if he repents, he'll be accepted as a layman. So if I were to be, if I were someone and I had my cassock off and they were like, are you a priest? Are you a priest of God? Are you an Orthodox priest? And for whatever reason, I was scared and I was like, no, 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 no. I am an Orthodox Christian, but I'm not a priest. And, I should be rightly deposed. What an embarrassment to deny the name of Christ and to reject the call to die, to pick up your cross and die. That's usually why you would do something like that, because you were too scared and you thought you might die. So it's if that happened and then there was repentance, they could be accepted as a layman, but what an embarrassment. It would be better to die in the first place. 63, if any bishop, presbyter, or deacon, or anyone else in the sacerdotal list at all eat meat in the blood of its soul, or that has been killed by a wild beast, or has died a natural death, let him be deposed. So you cannot eat meat with blood in it. You cannot eat blood pudding if you are German or you like these things. It is totally against the rules. And if you like Roadkill Cafe, sorry, you can't be eating there. It is deposable as a clergyman. But listen to this. For the law forbids this, but if any layman do the same, let him be excommunicated too. So it's not just the priests or the bishops. You cannot do this either. But if you go to Germany, you really need to be careful, because in Germany, they eat blood sausage. It's a delicacy there. So you have to make sure that it isn't, and it tastes good, they say. And if you go to Mennonites, also know this, they do it too. Some of them do it and have puddings, So some of them I've heard are totally against this kind of stuff, but it's like a heresy that's creeped in there. But because they're German, same with the Amish, and everybody who has German background, you need to be careful. Or maybe Polish. Yeah. Yeah. So just be aware. Polish, Eastern European, Slavic. But the Russians typically would just flee from this because they know. But those Latins, just being a little honoring here. Sorry. Okay. For you who don't understand, on the Eastern Europe, the Latins came over and kind of like with the Jesuits, they tried to take over, Poland, Hungary, all of these areas. And they let them be Orthodox kind of uniates. They became uniates, but they brought in some of these. bad practices.
And
Okay.
we're still undoing the damage.
Still undoing it. Yep. That's George. That's where he's from. He's from the Carpatho Mountain region on the border of those areas. That's where his heritage is from. Okay, next. If any clergyman be found fasting on Saturday or Sunday with the expectation of one day, let him be deposed from office. If, however, he is a layman, he must be excommunicated. So we are not supposed to be fasting on Saturdays and Sundays. These are holy days of celebration. So Saturday, the church still recognizes as kind of a rest day. It's supposed to be a day unto the Lord, and Sunday is the Lord's day. So even though we look at theoretically all day as as a resurrection, every day is supposed to be lived as a holy resurrection set apart from God, for God. Uh, the rules of the church prohibit us from fasting on those days, Saturdays and Sundays. And when they say fasting, they're talking about a complete and utter fast, which is only allowed on one Saturday, which is Saturday before the Paschal celebration. That's the Saturday that you can fast completely. And in fact, you're called to fast no bread or water if you can. If you can. And if you can't, then do what you can do to just eat vegetables and light stuff. Um, but so it's important that we don't think that we're extra holy. And this is why the saints were called to, even the monks eat on Saturdays and Sundays.
Father.
Yes.
And I was just going to ask that, because I think we've talked about that before. Like some of the monks would only uh eat Eucharist. It was their only, and they would only eat one day a week from during liturgy. So I was wondering how that.
So some of them, those ones that we read about that did that were usually like desert dwellers. These were ones that were considered dead. Like so they were like dead, like Zosimus and those who went out into the desert during the time. But they still, the one thing that is absolutely required is that they come in and they take the Eucharist, unless they were on one of these 40-day excursions where they just were out. But they would take bread, and then on Sunday they would eat a little bit of it. And if they came and they took the Eucharist on Sunday, they would also take Zapifka and blessed bread. So after they took the body and blood, they would always eat bread and they would always drink wine. Always. They could not say, no, I'm fasting, I'm holy. No. If they said that, then they would get in trouble. It's so um but typically the norm would be that on Saturdays and Sundays they would eat something more substantial. But there's exceptions. There's always exceptions through history, but we're just looking at the baseline. I suppose, John, if you start fasting super hard and you become a monk, that you'll just have to discuss this with your abbot and see what he'll allow you to do. That's what it all boils down to, our submission and our ability to be obedient to those in authority to us. If any, okay, so we just did that one. 66, 65. If any clergyman or layman enter into a synagogue of a Jews or of heretics to pray, let him be deposed and excommunicated. Very serious. So, yeah.
So since it says to pray, does that mean if you enter into one because you have to do some work or something, would you still be excommunicated or?
I don't think so. But I think in this time, people probably would not have taken jobs. But because we're in such a vastly different time than here, but we should just not go. So you have a Protestant family member who's getting married in a church. you could go and just stand to support them, but still, it gives me a little bit of a kind of a feeling. I don't know that it would be a sin. Could be a sin, but I'm not saying it is for sure, because what are they going to think? They're going to think, they're coming to my religious place. And without even intending to, you might give it credence in their mind. So this is why it's important to just be aware of that. But I've heard priests and bishops who know much more than me, and they say, well, just go, don't be rude, don't offend anybody, and extend love to them. And love triumphs over everything. So my starting place is always love and care. Sometimes that expresses itself in, refraining from something and having people ask questions and being offended. But sometimes it's like, now's not the time, and we can just pass over it. And then through love, minister to the heart. But you just have to be careful. But certainly out of curiosity or something, it's just a total horrible thing to do. Don't ever go just because you want to investigate what it's like. Why would you want to know?
This is a really important question for me, because I go and clean my decks.
Mhm.
So is that wrong for me? Should I put it?
No,
Or-
because no, Anya, can you put a little more water in there and put tea bag back in there because it's a little too sugary? No, because they're hiring you. So same if they were hiring you to mow the yard, you would mow it. I mean, we mow for all sorts of pagans. I mean, we're slaves in this world, and so it's like that. And you have this level of like absolute revulsion against Christ. And if if a satanic temple wanted to hire you to clean, it would just be like so over the board. These people in America that are Protestant, we've said this over and over again, most of them don't even know about the real church. Most of them in their mind are simply loving God to the best ability that they have. And so we don't want to just judge them that they are totally doing stuff like willfully against Christ. Now, if you're going to a satanic whatever, that's pretty obvious,
Regular synagogue, basically.
yeah. And the Jews obviously, but your typical conservative Protestant church is not like, most of them don't even have a clue that the Orthodox Church exists. So, Theodora, did you have a question? I thought I heard somebody. Okay.
No, not me.
Okay. Next, if any clergy strikes anyone in a fight and kills by a single blow, let him be deposed from office for his insolence. So and then it goes on here, but if a layman, let him be excommunicated. So laymen should not get into fights. And obviously a priest is not allowed to get into a fight, but if he does and he kills somebody, he will be deposed. Even if the point of them saying in one strike is like, well, the priest could say, well, how was I to know? I just hit. Did you fill this up with hot water? Well, it doesn't look like you filled any up. Oh, yeah, maybe to there. You could just, in the mind of the priest, you could think like, oh, well, I'll just intervene. I'm just going to give one blow. Surely this isn't going to kill. But the point is like one blow could kill. You don't know what your punch is going to do or whatever. So you have to be super careful. So if anyone keeps a virgin whom he has forcibly raped, though she be not engaged to another man, let him be excommunicated. And let it not be permissible for him to take another, but let him be obligated to keep her whom he has made his choice, even though she happened to be indigent. So here's the deal. It's a horrible situation, obviously, but an indigent person, so some sort of a poor person who is at his house as a maid or something, and he forces and rapes. That man is never allowed to marry anybody else except for this woman. Now, in later canons, it's pretty clear that if this woman has a father and the father forbids, then she's not required to marry this person. But definitely this man is, if he could not control himself to wait for proper marriage, then he's not allowed. The church is saying, like, sorry, you can't marry anybody else. This is your woman the rest of your life if she'll have you. So sorry, buddy. So the lesson for us is, well, all of you who are married, this should never be an issue, but it should be that we teach our sons how serious these types of things are and be like, look, son, you better not be messing around ever, because here's the consequences. Here's one of these examples of, like, if you would just know, like, let's say, for instance, in this country, if there was a rule that anybody who molested any child or raped anybody was castrated, I can almost guarantee you that the amount of that's happening in this country would be reduced almost in an instant if people were notified. So if in every elementary school, every public school, every high school, every college, every corner, there would be county notes is like, by the way, if you do this, you're going to be emasculated. Just letting you know. It's going to be taken care of, and we're going to deal with this problem immediately. I can almost guarantee it wouldn't go away totally, but it would go away almost totally. Like, I would say 80%, maybe 75%. And that we would have a police force that would be doing. Okay, so in the same way, if you had a son that you were taught, you're going to teach him to be respectful, you're going to teach him what it is to have honor and nobility and all of this stuff, and you're like, and by the way, if you ever touch a woman, sorry, son, you will no longer be considered a full man. And from the time that he's little, he'll be like, note to self, never touch a woman. Talk to dad when I'm feeling like I need to find a wife. And be a respectable enough. Anyways, the point is, you get the point. So, just lessons so you can teach your children.
Good job right there.
So, in Constantinople, when the Eastern Roman Empire was there and people did bad stuff like this, they did, like, their punishment was horrible. They would cut people's noses off, cut people's ears off. I'm not for that. The only thing that I would be for is what I just said. It would be the only thing that I would be for. Because I think it would just fix a lot of stuff. But I'm not promoting that. I'm just saying that. But I don't think that it's beneficial to cut people's noses off because they did some heresy. This is what the Roman law was. And I don't think that that's pleasing to Christ. And maybe what I was suggesting is I'm not suggesting that somebody should pass a law. I'm just saying, like, if this was done, nobody, it would deal with a lot of stuff. So don't say that Father Stephen's suggesting that we go and emasculate all these bad men. I'm not. So 68, if any priest or presbyter or deacon accept a second ordination from anyone, let him and the one who ordained him be deposed, unless it be established that his ordination has been performed by heretics. For those who have been baptized or ordained by such persons cannot possibly be either faithful Christians or clergymen. So listen, if you become a clergyman and you're like, oh, I just wish I could have been ordained by that bishop, and you're like, oh, could you go and ordain me? Like the idea is so ludicrous because what is done is done. Like, but to do that and to have some bishop who would do this, like obviously we're talking about something that was done or could have possibly been thought of being done in the lowest level when the church was just beginning to be built. Why would this be a problem? Because you would maybe have some schismatic, spirited bishop who wants to bring people into his orb and would maybe try to break off and have um, a shadow church eventually. So like, come to me, I'm better than so and so, but he was not doing it yet outside of the church, but you can see this kind of spirit. Now, the thought of going and being ordained by somebody else is so completely ridiculous. It's like it's hard to contemplate. Although, sometimes people are coaxed out of the church into the schismatic, like old believer, old Greek, these Greek old old calendarists and stuff. And but I think they kind of honor the ordinations that somebody has already had. I don't know if they reordain them, but anyways, I don't really care about it because they shouldn't have left and they're already outside of the church when they do this. So 69, if any bishop or presbyter or deacon, subdeacon, agnost, Psalter fails to fast through the 40 days of Holy Lent or on Wednesdays and Fridays, let him be deposed from office. Did you hear this? This is how serious fasting is. Let him be deposed from office. And what is noted here, I read the commentary from Saint Nicodemus or Saint Nicodemus, depending on where you're from. And he is saying that this is so serious that the apostles put everybody on the list. That's from the lowest clergy all the way up. Bishop, presbyter, deacon, subdeacon, agnos, and psalter. That's somebody who sings in the choir. Fails to fast. They are to be deposed unless they're prevented from reason of bodily illness. Otherwise, if on the other hand, a layman failed to do so, let him be excommunicated.
Would the bishop propose in the instance of like accident? Like, for instance, like one time I like accidentally drank water because I forgot.
No,
Yeah.
no. And yeah, I mean, well, on the liturgy, if you mean not deposed from office, but he may be like, you should not commune.
I was just using an example of like that missing the fast accidentally.
Yeah, and no, so you're somewhere and somebody puts cheese on your salad and you don't realize it and you start eating and then you look underneath the first layer of leaves and there's a whole bunch of cheese, you know. But again, the fast is so serious here that it makes it very clear the only reason that you should not fast is because of illness. He goes on and he refers to several of the other councils that just mention absolutely the same thing, excepting health. So pregnant mothers or nursing mothers or those who are sick. And under the guidelines of these other things, I would have been allowed to eat that egg that Dr. Paisios said, but like I told you last week, Dr. Paisios was like, oh, or I didn't say who the doctor was, but anyways, he was like, eat eggs, Father, you've got to eat eggs. You're so sick. But I didn't want to, and I still am glad that I didn't. But I could have, and I know I could have. And the same with people who are working in Lent. Like it says in the Apostolic Constitution, if somebody is working, typically during Lent, you start the fast. You do the fast and then you don't eat until 3. This is what the strict is. But if you're a working man and you're laboring and you're straining and it's this hard to do. So just keep the fast rules as far as what you may eat and just eat it in the morning and be able to work through, because you will get sick and you'll die. And again, the purpose of fasting is not just to check something off the list. It's to gain self-control, but also it is to prove obedience to Christ. We can't divorce this reality out of there. You have to understand that it's not just so much that you can say, oh, well, I'm probably going to have self-control. No, this is an obedience to Christ. And this is why we have to obey this fast. And if you don't fast, then you should not be communing. Okay? This is what it says.
Like my
Well-
little brother and I, we both did forest firefighting,
Mhm,
and most of that can take place even during
mhm.
Great Lent. And so they give you these like military meals in a bag,
Uh-huh.
and it's like, that's like your main meal of the day,
Right.
and there's really no way to avoid not eating it, because if you don't eat it, you're pretty much starving anyway.
Yeah.
Just with what you're being given, you're like burning twice as many calories as you're eating. You're losing weight throughout the whole summer.
Yeah.
So, like, what would I tell my little brother, in the upcoming season? Like, what would somebody like that do if really you're not,
Mhm.
you can't go to a store, you're doing such physically difficult work. Like, I've been on boats where they don't offer anything, and you just don't have a choice,
Yeah.
or you starve.
Yeah. So
I'm
with
not
the
joking. I say.
Yeah, no. The thing that I would suggest is let's so I don't know what the right answer. I'm not sure what the bishop would say. But what I would say, and I would hope that I would not get in trouble, would be let's make a good college age shot in communicating with the commander. I mean, almost certainly, they're going to take care of Jews and they're going to take care of Muslims. Almost certainly.
So, like, basically,
So-
during a vegan meal,
So I would just say, hey, look, I, for religious reasons, is there any sort of, food stuff that you have in some of your rules that provide for people who, for religious reasons, cannot eat certain things? And even if that meant that you buy a whole bunch of Cliff Bars, like at the beginning, and you're like, can I just give this to the cook? I don't know how it goes. I don't know if like at the end of the day, you come back to camp, you're just sleeping on the ground, like you have it all in your pack, and
they
then you go.
usually have like a helicopter just drop off food.
Yeah.
Like, on a cargo.
Yeah, so here's the deal. So two things. Number one, maybe get a new job.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost like we can't think, like almost this reality doesn't. If we lived in the time when this was written, you just wouldn't take a job when you couldn't fast. So I would say,
Yeah.
this should be so serious that you understand, like, is it worth it? Because Christ is like, hey, are you really my bride? Are you really wanting to submit to me? Do you really want to give your life to me? Or is your life about you and you want to go do this and that while you're young because it's your life? Well, if it's your life, then it's like it's your life. So that would be the first thought. I mean, the first thought that I had was like the compassion. Like, I hate to hurt anybody's feelings. Like, oh, well, maybe we could so let's try to do that. But really, like, so maybe, like, did you know that in the early church, you could not have certain jobs? Like, there's in St. Hippolytus, there is a huge list, and it takes 2 pages. Like, you cannot do this, you cannot do this, you cannot do this, all the way down. And it has nothing to do with even food, but I'm sure that he would be like, are you serious? Like, you want a job that's going to force you to break the church's basic apostolic rules? And then I think he would be like, no, you make the choice. I mean, I really do. I'm not trying to be hard, but I'm like, of the spirit of the early church. I mean, I'm pretty confident that when you read those, they would be like, we get a different job, But I'm 100% sure that most people that are clergy will be like, shut your mouth, Father Stephen. This is just not acceptable in our day and age. But I'm like, because I'm pretty sure most people would say, like, yeah, I'll give you a blessing to do this and do this, and because economy is the new canon of the day. But I want to say to you this, when you're thinking about the early church and being willing to die you're thinking about the most early commands of the church that are to fast. And if you have the physical ability to fast and you just choose not to, this is like a bit frightening to me. Because we're talking about the serious, like this is the God of universe. Like we're only going to be on the earth for a very small amount of time. Like so small. It's the smallest preface you've ever read in your life. Our life is a preface. Every book, every good book has a preface. Our life is going to be spent in eternity. We can't even say the majority because it's so much time that you can't even account your life here on earth as even measurable, except it is so measurable that it sets the trajectory of eternity for you. So measurable. But it sets the whole trajectory of your eternity. And in this immeasurably small amount of eternal life that you have here on earth, in the state that you're in right now, you need to do so much work on your nous that it will set you so that you can be with God, and then you can continue to grow in perfection and perfection on and on and on and on and on, and to become closer with God. And it's immeasurable. You can keep getting deeper in holiness and oneness with God in the eternal realms. So it's so easy. And I mean, I get kind of bamboozled in the thought of the moment. And I know it seems hard, but I just think like, when I think of the shepherd of Hermas and I think about the one shepherd you have the two shepherds there, there's these sheep. There's two sets of sheep. There's the one sheep that are frolicking around and they're so happy and they're nice and they're fat and sleek and they're so beautiful. And they have this handsome shepherd and he's got such a good staff and he's dressed in this beautiful yellow gown and he's nice and he's all trimmed and he's so peaceful and cheerful and nice. And then you see this other shepherd. Those of you who have read this, you remember this part? You see this other shepherd and he is austere and he looks kind of like John the Baptist. I think you see this kind of like, and he's wearing like a hair shirt and he has like this leather satchel on and he has this mean look about him and he's all scraggly and scary looking. And the one shepherd is actually from Satan and he's leading this whole flock into hell. And this other shepherd is the shepherd of God, that is the shepherd of correction that saves people, even though. And so this shepherd, he goes and he snatches some of these sheep that are in this good, and brings them into the fold. But then he breaks their leg or he does this and he brings them in because he's austere. But that is the angel that brings them life. And then in the document, he goes on to say, you should, like, basically implying you should want the shepherd that is firm and hard. But our tendency as humans is to want to be really, really, really nice because we don't want anybody's feelings to be hurt. And it is really hard. I mean, there are some people that are just mean and it's easy for them. But I think probably most people want to be nice and they don't want anybody's feelings to be hurt. And we read the stories of those few saints that were super nice and it worked with people. But the problem is we don't read all of the stories where there was all of these priests and bishops who were just nice to everybody. And now the masses for instance, in America, like if you look at the Greek church and the Antiochian church and the ethnic churches where they had people that were just like, oh, do whatever. They're lost. Like most of them have left the church. Their children have left the church. Their lives are in the world. And it's like, I promise you, for those people, in 100 years, the most important thing in their life at that point will be, I wish I would have done what I could have done when I was not dead. I mean, it's the most important thing to do now is to just live. And I'm not saying that these canons are what are going to make it or break it. Humility and a striving after righteousness. But if we were humble, why would we not fast?
you know, to add on to that, I just kind of reminded myself, I did actually work with a legal ghost firefighter. You know, I had the fortune of working closer to home, whereas Julian doesn't.
Yeah.
He's on a crew. And I'm
He's,
like,
yeah,
shit,
he's all over the
it's like,
place.
you know, so if this guy can do that and stay vegan, like, there's some vegan, they don't even eat honey anymore because of the honeybees being, it's like a byproduct. It's so weird. But I'm
Wow.
like, if somebody like this is super austere, even in their quackery, like that just should put any Christian to shame that
Yeah.
and does not.
Oof.
That I think that was a kind of like a Chrysostom style example.
Yeah, that is a big example. There's a lot of those. I mean, we can be put to shame. You know, like there's so many people who are not in the faith of Christ and they're so dedicated. And it's just like when Jesus says, look, Sodom and Gomorrah are going to rise up on that day, and Nineveh will rise up on that day, and they will say, look, we are punished because we didn't follow, but we repented. And you say you're a follower of God, and yet you won't do what he says.
I'll
So,
talk to him about all these things that
yeah,
you shared.
I'm not, I mean, I in no way want to come across as like the piety police. This is not my, I'm just responding to questions. Like after these classes, I go home and I'm just like, oh no.
Forgive me, Father.
I hope I don't get in trouble for this. But my conscience bears witness. I just cannot. I just think when you read the saints and we like everybody loves Saint Cleopa or everybody loves uh Theophan the Recluse. And Theophan the Recluse said to this woman who this man came and wanted to court this woman's daughter. And he said, well, does he fast every day? All of the fast periods? And I don't remember what the exact exchange was, but I do remember this. He said, if he doesn't fast, he's not a Christian. And when I read that, I just about passed out because when we first started, I was looking for any excuse to not do the fast. When we were at Ash Grove, hey, Father Moses, could I have a blessing to, my throat's a little sore. Could I have a blessing to have some wine tonight? It's like medicine. Yes, Stephen. He always called me Stephen. Almost nobody else called me Stephen except because I don't really like it. It's my dad's name. But that's who I am now. But anyways, yes, Stephen, it's okay. And he wouldn't scold me. He wouldn't do anything. And by his prayers now in heaven, I think I understand the seriousness of it. But he was always gracious and was always like, oh yes, it's okay. And then later on, I was just like, it's because I'm so lazy. I mean, my conscience bears with. Even to this day, I have to tell you, I am sometimes because I always think of all of the saints. There's like this handful of saints that are like occasionally give like this excuse so you can break the fast or this excuse. And as I'm driving, I'm like, oh yeah, because Saint so-and-so from this place said, well, if you're traveling, you need to have enough energy, so it's okay to eat fish. And I'm so like, oh yeah, that. And I'm always like, I'm battling. Even now, as a priest, I still think, And then I'm like, okay, we're just gonna go and we're gonna buy some bell peppers, or we're just gonna eat the whole thing. We're just gonna fill my tummy up and just gonna like chow it down before there's any time to make a bad decision. So anyway,
Father,
sorry for the big reflection, everybody. Go ahead, John.
couple questions. Well, an observation. When you were talking about the two shepherds, the first one that you were talking about that was handsome and kind, and this immediately in my mind, Joel Osteen popped into my head.
Yeah.
And but uh, another thing, one point of clarification on this canon: is it referring to somebody that doesn't keep any of the fast for Lent or any time, or is it somebody that messed up like
Breaks it.
somebody? Huh?
It's for both those who don't keep it and those who break it.
Okay. And last question is, in the Catholic Church, they say, oh, once you're over 65, you're not obligated to keep the fast. And I always had an issue with that. My grandpa, said, oh, I don't have to fast during that because I'm over this age now and stuff like that. But I don't think that's the way it is in the Orthodox Church.
Yeah, it says unless he be prevented from doing so for bodily illness. So I mean, everybody just had like, look, the deal again is our heart right with God. Like I gave that example where I'm just trying to make some sort of excuse. And look, I'm incredibly healthy. I mean, I'm super healthy. And I'm still trying to make excuses. It's true when you're older, there may be a time where you just can't fast. But again, that's part of the fast. And so also like we're supposed to stand in church, but it may be that you physically cannot do it. There's nothing wrong with then sitting down. In fact, it might be wrong to not sit down. Does that make sense? Because of pride or whatever. So the issue is the heart of obedience and wanting to serve our bridegroom, Christ. This is really where the heart of the issue comes in humility. I mean, like if our hearts were just poured out in humility, we would just be like, oh, the master says this, the master says this, I can do this, I can do this. But at least for me, my sins are so great and my humility is so small. My pride is just that it just clouds things for me and I have to battle through. I'm like, what am I thinking? Why am I thinking this? Or what's this and that? So God help you and God be with your priest. I mean, and you just submit to your priest, whatever your local priest tells you, you should do. And you'll find that your priest is probably going to be on the merciful side. So be careful to not just ask him all the time. It's bad for you if you just don't want to do something and you just want to ask permission. Your priest, it's so hard for a priest to say, "Oh no, it's okay." Yeah, it's okay. It's just so hard. So if you know, like, I probably could keep the fast, but I really don't want to. Or you like you'd have these debates. Just really, really think about what you want permission and see if it's really, really sound. Pray to the Theotokos. Theotokos, should I go to the priest and put this on his soul? Because every one of these questions is something that we're going to have to answer for before God. And we don't know all the right answers. And sometimes we're just guessing in the dark. So have some mercy. Have some mercy. Go to the Theotokos. Go to your saints. Go to all of the saints. Go to some of the saints that are really, really strong and serious, who prayed all the prayer rules. Saint Seraphim Maserot, Saint Theophan the Recluse, Saint John the Golden Mouth, Saint Basil the Great, Saint Gregory. Pray to them and say, if you could just give me some thoughts, guardian angel, should I ask this? Do I actually know the answer to this? Do I need to ask my priest? I don't know. This is the first time I ever suggested this, but I have this kind of confirmation in my heart to say, like, I bet if you did that, maybe 30%, maybe 50% of the questions that you might have would be answered. Maybe. I can't prove this for sure, but yeah. So, any questions about that? Okay, if any bishop, presbyter, or deacon, or anyone at all who is on the list of the clergy fast together with the Jews or celebrate a holiday together with them, or accepts from them holiday gifts or favors, such as unleavened wafers or any like, let him be disposed from office. If a layperson do likewise, let him be excommunicated. So this is how serious this is. If somebody who's a Jew or some other heresy has some sort of celebration and they have something like our blessed bread, something like this, something to this extent, and they're giving it out to people like, this is a real blessing, man. Do not take it. It doesn't matter. Just say, oh, thanks, but no thanks. I can't do that because I'm a Christian. Just say it. Just practice. You should practice saying that. Oh, I'm sorry, I can't do that. I'm an Orthodox Christian. We should say this in the mirror. I think this would help everybody in America. Oh, you want to watch that movie? Oh, I can't do it. I'm an Orthodox Christian. That's filth. I think it would be good for everybody to get used to saying this because it's so hard to hurt anybody's feelings. And this is what it's like. If you go to Russia, it's like this. You're on the phone with somebody and they're like, they get done with the conversation and you want to keep talking and they have to go. They just interrupt. Hey, I've got to go. And you say, oh, okay, bye. And then they hang up. Here in America, you're on the phone with somebody and you really have to go, but they keep talking and talking. And you're like, maybe they're going to take a break. And then you can just say, oh, I've really got to go, but they just keep going on. And we just listen for 5, 10, 15 minutes. Or we're at the post office, somebody says, oh, and they start blah, 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 blah. And you really got to go. And you're just like, because we think it's impolite to say something. And we do it to the detriment of our soul sometimes. You know what I'm saying? So you got to just get a backbone and you've got to start saying, oh, I just can't do that. I'm an Orthodox Christian. And they'll say, what is Orthodox Christian? And you're like, oh, well, I've got to go now because I've been here at the post office for 15 minutes. But yeah, why don't you come to supper? Me and my wife would like to share with you what it is to be an Orthodox Christian, and then just go away, whatever. So anyway, okay. If any Christian conveys oil to the temple of a heathen or to the synagogue of Jews in their festivals or lights lamps for them, let him be excommunicated. Do not take oil and give it to them as a gift. Because you're supporting their heresy, they're worshiping a false god. And so you cannot do this. If you do it, you'll be excommunicated. If any clergyman, layman, okay, so with this, I hope you get the idea. So if you ever hear a priest say, you're like, hey, I have a question about this, some theology, you're like, well, you know what, why about this with the Jews, or why about this with the Protestants? And your priest or your bishop's like, why are these questions coming to your mind? You're like, oh, well, I was on YouTube and I was watching this Protestant guy, or I was watching this Jew. If your priest or bishop says, don't ever do that again, you're obligated to obey him. You should not be listening to Protestants. You should not be listening to heretics. You should not be listening to the Coptics. You should not be listening to anybody who is outside of the Orthodox Church. And if that's true about religious things, then you also need to be aware about worldly philosophies and whatever else things these are saying. But listen, if somebody says, oh yeah, I was just reading this, like, it's the job of the priest and the bishop to kill wolves and crush heads of bears. That's what we do. We're shepherds. And so if somebody's like, I think I'm going to go hang out with a pack of wolves. Yeah, I love Dr. David Jeremiah. He's such a great speaker, Chuck Swindoll. No. Turn off bot family radio network. And if you're like, oh, wow, that's all right. But I was thinking wanted to listen to, I wonder what communism is and what it teaches. Like, no. Thanks for letting me know that you're going to listen to this. This is bad stuff for your soul. Or you're like, I want to. So what is it that Bob Marley really believes? Why does all these people do the Bob Marley thing? Father, have you ever heard anything about Bob Marley? Yes. Don't read anything about him. And this is like, and you're hearing this today in our world, in America in 2025. And it's like, this priest is a censor. He's telling people not to educate and find this out. Like, hello, welcome to the church. By the way, this is the way it's always been. You should not read sewage. You should not be exposing yourself to this. This is trash. It is poison for the soul. I'm sorry. Just don't do it. And then this goes for entertainment too. You need to be really careful about entertainment.
I think there was a saint story, forgive me for not remembering who, but in the vision of these apostles that had entered his cell in a vision, the Mother Mary would not enter to his cell because of the filth that was in his bookshelf.
Mm,
And he was this austere saint who would be in a cell for up to 10 years without contact with the world. And, you know, he was very serious in the faith. And most likely he was studying this text to argue against it, not even to promote it.
mhm.
And that, even that text in his cell prevented the Mother Mary from wishing to enter
Yeah,
into a
wow.
cell. And he immediately burned the next day, burned that text from what I remember. This was shared with me by a friend. But
Yeah.
it was interesting.
Yeah, I think it's important, some of these things that we should go through our books. We should go through our books, and definitely if you're reading any sort of like witchcraft, definitely like Harry Potter or anything like this, you should throw it, and you don't take it to the bookstore, don't take it to the thrift store. Burn it outside in the fire in your fireplace. It's demonic. There's so much demonic stuff out there. And also your phones, dear ones, your phones you're just exposed constantly. You can be exposed constantly to this stuff. And if that means that you crush your phone and you get some sort of flip phone, or you get some other thing, then that may be what it takes. Um, uh, but yes.
Like debates and stuff, like let's say an Orthodox Christian is debating Calvinist or a Muslim, or
Mhm.
name whatever you want.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there should be great discrimination in watching those things. I think you should definitely be advanced, because these guys that are debating, if they're in a debate with an Orthodox apologist, well, first off, I kind of have a hard time even with like, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing? Like submitting ourselves to a debate as if we're equal or something. Sorry. I mean, we're not equal. Like, if you have questions about what the truth is, you can come and talk to me and I'll tell you where you're wrong. But like, I know, and there's been a lot of people who have done good, so I'm not saying that they should never be done, but I mean, I just personally have a hard time with this, because I just think like the saints in the first 7, 8, 8, 900 years, if you read Saint Theophan or Saint Simeon, the new of Thessaloniki, he talks about all of these heresies. And like, there's no way he'd be like, oh yeah, let's have a debate. Let's see who's more right. No, like we're right. We're Christians. Like we're Christians in the Orthodox faith, apostolic Christians. You're not apostolic Christians. You're less. You're not Catholic. You're missing a whole bunch of stuff. Now, if in that missing of the Catholicity, you have a question, come to me. You sit there, you ask a question. I will answer you. If you're going to be rude, you're going to interrupt, then I'll say, okay, game over. We don't need to get the passion stirred up. This is foolishness. Though there are guys like Jay Dyer who have converted many, many, many thousands of young men. But the problem is that so many of those young men have come in through a sense of prideful arrogance. And I just don't know how far they'll go. We should come into the faith because we are broken and humble, and we realize that Christ is God and that his body is the church, and that the only way we can have life is by taking his body and blood. It's the only way. So go ahead.
And forgive me for adding a second question, sort of a question, I should say, is that I find this dilemma within my heart very regularly. Somebody who, you know, used to study and read a lot of literature, a lot more in my like earlier youth. So I'll hear the story of that saints that I mentioned just now, and then I am juxtaposing that to somebody speaking in the line of where.
Hold on just one second. Can everybody hear Nicola? Or just somebody give me a thumbs up? Okay. Just speak up enough so that they can hear.
So, you know, in juxtaposing that saint's story that I mentioned earlier to Saint Ignatius Branchaninov, speaking in the line of thought of Saint Paul and being to be wise as serpents and innocent as doves, but focusing on the wise as serpents part here, Saint Ignatius Branchaninov to me is a very terrifying saint in the sense of his like fear of God. Whenever you like the sober-mindedness of his writings, But he also does say to like study the ways of the enemy so as to know. Because in many ways, I think like the Bolshevik Revolution, coming from my background, was as a result of many peasants in their ignorance not knowing that the pitfalls of what they were joining in.
Yeah.
Forgive
So
me, I just this
no,
the dilemma in my
it's a good question. He very, very often, have you read through all of his books?
the arena was mainly the
Okay,
yeah.
he made it very clear that we should, like what the passage I remember him saying is that we should never ever read any of the texts of the heretics.
So the question is, to what extent then, how does one get to be familiar with the way that the enemy, in a sense, deceives the mainstream society?
So the people that were deceived were not people like you.
Okay.
They were the peasants who were full of avarice,
Right.
or they had been taken advantage of the faithful by the other faithful
Right.
who were landowners. And because, really, forgive me, but because of the schism in 1667 that brought in Peter the Bad, before that, the poor people were taken care of and they had communal lands that they could have and free. When eventually you got to the later czars, that out of a desire, so feudalism came in with Peter the Great, who was actually Peter the Bad. And feudalism then forced these people who had not been slaves, but had been brothers and sisters that worked for you on your land to be slaves. And then later, when the feudalism was broke down, they were not employed like they had been before 1667. And then what happened was they were so poor and starving that they had birch shoes. Like if you read Tolstoy,
Yeah,
and I'm not
they
so
liberated the serfs without
Mhm.
like any welfare program to reinstate them back into society
Yeah.
in a proper way.
Yeah, so it was just a horrible situation. So the answer is Father Stephen saying don't read anything? No, I'm not saying that. Although at the end here, the apostles will say don't read any. Actually, they'll say read the Gospels, read the Old Testament, read this stuff. What I'm saying is you absolutely just have to have such a measure of discrimination. But if somebody is young in the faith and they're like, I'd like to hear what about the Presbyterians? I want to learn about Presbyterianism. I want to understand Calvinism. You should not just go off on your own and do that. First off, it's really no layperson's position to go and educate themselves in other heresies. It's the priest's job or the deacons. Now, the priest and the deacon can say, I'm going to teach you about these, or I want this. But all the laity also have to say, hey, this Presbyterian came and talked to me, Father, and he said this weird stuff. We have to have this relationship. The laity have the relationship more to go to the priest or the deacon or the bishop and lay out this garbage that they heard from their neighbor. These people that call themselves Jehovah's Witnesses, they came to my house and they said all this stuff. If the laity are being faithful to Christ like they should be, they're going to be coming to the church service. They probably will know this is the way that the God and the Fathers intended it. You're going to all of the services and you're listening and you're paying attention and you're learning all of these doctrines because you're going to Vespers and Matins. This is where you learn doctrine. All of the dogma of the church that we teach in seminaries is found in the Trapar and Kentuck and the Manaean. It's in the services. So if a faithful person is there and they are going all the time, they're hearing all this stuff. When they hear this garbage, it should trigger. If they don't know, they should come and talk to their priest. If they are of a mind that has the ability to comprehend, then he may be like, yeah, read this or read this or read this book or read this book. But you need to be careful. And I'm not saying that you don't have permission to read it, but you have a choice. Like I could go and spend my time reading, the Institutes of John Calvin, which I have. They're incredibly alluring. All of these writings are very alluring because they're full of earthly wisdom, and it's like taking candy into your soul, and you're like, "Ooh, this is really great." Now, why am I spending hours and hours reading this when I don't have enough time to read the lives of the saints? You know what I'm saying?
So basically, you read enough orthodox literature to the point where even if you hear somebody say something, you don't even have to be this high theology student, but to intuitively realize that like, that's wrong. That's
Yeah.
not okay. I don't want to entertain this. Can you please leave?
Yeah, like the people in the Bolshevik Revolution should have instantaneously, if they were faithful and the faithful ones did. Oh, these people are trying to tell me that my king is bad. These people don't believe in God, but because I want something, they're exploiting my avarice. I should have been cued, or like, yeah, I really like to understand the petrodollar, which is like, okay, if yeah, go ahead and do this, but be careful. But if then all of a sudden you're online all the time and like your free time is going to be like, okay, so are we going to get rid of the Brent standard, or we're going to like, oh, the petrodollar is going to be gone and it's going to be the petro yen, or and then this is what your mind is. This is what we're trying to avoid. It's not so much that the learning or whatever, but it's that you could easily be sucked this way or this way or this way.
I made father and I didn't.
Speak loud.
Yeah. Something to always consider, not just with this reading, but all of your reading and everything that you do. A quote from Saint Macarius the Great says, that of which is your contemplation and that which you spend your time doing is your God.
Yeah. John said that which is your contemplation and that which you're doing is your God, which even before I became Orthodox, I always was convicted, like, am I playing, is track my God? Because I ran track and I was good at it. Or is football my God? Because I played football for whatever, 12 years. That's a long time. Or video games or watching football. And I would always think like, is this an idol? I was just plagued with this thought, like, this must be an idol. And then when that would come, then I would be like, okay, I'm going to stop this for a while. But
One great thing my dad did for me. I'm gonna tell you what he said and not tell you what he did because the two are conflicting. But one thing that he did tell us, his sons, to do that I wish I could have kept, but of course I didn't. There was no way to keep it in the Protestant faith. Was spend more time doing something with God than you do everything else.
yeah,
He only allowed us 1 hour of video games a day, which was still too much, but but because we were supposed to be spending more time in reading the scriptures or praying to God, which it's so much easier in the Orthodox faith, so much easier to do that. If you apply that rule to your life, you will not go away empty-handed.
yeah, that's a great rule. Do more for God. How did he say it?
You spend more time doing something for God, and like whether it be reading the scriptures or praying or worshiping in some way, then you do everything else in your life. Of course, there's exceptions, like you have to work.
Yeah.
If you don't work, you don't eat. But as far as things that you choose your time for these things, and you still do choose your work to a degree too.
Right.
You can't just be like, well, I'm just gonna work for 60 hours a week and this because I
Come here.
don't eat. Like there's a certain amount where it's like, okay, you can be reasonable with this, but if everything else you choose in your life, you make the choice. You make that choice. You don't have to be like, well, it's like, I don't have a choice on this hobby of mine because it's like so important in my life. It's like, you made the choice to have that hobby. You made the choice to have that job even, it's like, you chose it or Christ.
Yeah. So before you start pursuing one of those hobbies, it's just really important to be aware. Now, if you marry a woman and your father-in-law is an atheist, it might behoove you to study that. It might behoove you to study, or like he's like whispering these things into your wife's ear, and you're firm. You're firm. You should still counsel with your priest or spiritual father and be like, hey, this is what's going on. Can I get your blessing to do this? And can you pray for me? this is what's going on. Can you pray, for these things? I mean, there's no doubt those who were under the care of Saint Basil the Great, Saint John Chrysostom, they were going to the university because, somebody could hear this and be like, oh, so this means we probably shouldn't go get an education. Well, there's a good question, like, to what extent and why do I want to get an education? What use is the liberal arts and how important is this? There is some importance to it, but the greater importance is to worship God. And the most important thing is to not fall away.
Father.
Yep.
For me, and I don't know, the tendency used to be, read something that I'm unfamiliar with or that's got my curiosity, and then you begin to almost get that itching of the ears. You're like, I'm
Oh
into
yeah.
areas that I know something that isn't, well, it's almost like occult knowledge. You
Yeah.
begin to get that drive to go deeper and deeper because you're getting into mysteries that aren't. I mean, there's I don't know, when you begin to peel that's a good indication to me that it's like, okay, you need to back
Yeah.
off because there's you know
Yeah, yeah. Somebody came to me once and started asking me all the names of the angels, the names of these different angels and the different 9 ranks. And then they said, do you know the names of these uh, dark noetic powers on these different ends? I was like, no, why would you even want to know? And this person had gone to the dark web and started reading some of this stuff and like investigating certain Masonic things because they wanted to know so that they could be aware of it, but they totally messed them up. And now they're outside of the faith. So I'm just saying, like, these things are not a joke. Like, you just have to be aware that you have, as an Orthodox Christian, a big, big uh target on you, more than any other Christians in the world. And opening ourselves up to these things is really, really real. Whether that's, um, this kind of secular music or this kind of secular reading or this kind of news or whatever. All things are acceptable. Not all things are profitable. This is what the apostle says. And so, even though the church may like have some strict guidelines, there is also this realm of like freedom that you have to just be really careful and really wise. You just have to use great discernment. And if you're not sure, like, is this going to be okay? Is this not going to be okay? My mojo in those instances, well, since I'm not sure, I'm just not going to do it until I can be sure. I'm going to get some counsel. I'm going to talk to some godly people, and then bounce it off people's minds and go from there. Okay, we have 15 left and we have 10 minutes left, but I think we can get these done because a lot of these are super fast. So if a 72, we actually have less than 15. If any clergyman or layman take a wax candle or any oil from the church, let him be excommunicated or compelled to give back what he took, together with 5 parts of the value to boot. So this is what you cannot take stuff out of the church. Even if you light a candle or you're given a candle in a feast day, or we like having a fest, in a vigil, you get a candle. And in most churches, the old days, people would have given money. They would have got the candles. Of course, in our parish, some people donate the candles and we pass it out because we're poor, and that's good. But eventually, when people aren't poor, then they should put in some money to take a candle. And that's the way it goes. Actually, once we're in this building, we're going to have candles for sale in the bookstore, and people can go to the candle store, buy the candles, put them in, and then pray for stuff. But you can't take anything. And this is also why you cannot take the books out of the church or papers or anything unless you've been given a blessing to take it. So like, you can't just take incense out or whatever. A priest or a bishop has to give it away. And they have the authority to do that, but you just have to be really careful. So with your little children, you have to make sure that from the very beginning, they have this ethos in their mind, like, candles stay in the church. All these things stay in the church. So just like that icon that we talked about, this is, you see the connection here. So anyway, let no one appropriate any longer for his own use any gold or silver vessel that has been sanctified, or any clothes, for it is unlawful to do so. If anyone be caught in the act, let him be punished with excommunication. So this is like if, you know, if a priest or a deacon or anybody who's any level of clergy or any layperson is like, oh, I really love that bowl, or, you know, I saw that dish that they brought out, the Zapifgon, it was super beautiful. I'd love to have that at my house. I'll just use it this week. I'm having some guests over. No, no.
Right. If
Yeah,
they
yeah,
use it, they can be like, "Hey, can I buy that from the church?"
Yeah, it can never,
It was used in the church. You
yeah,
can't.
it can never be used for anything other than sacred. So I can give it to another church. I can give it to a chapel, but I cannot give it to somebody, or, you know, some other chapel could buy it, but, you know. So this is why you see all these churches that have been established for a long time, they have closets full of church stuff that just is not used because they can't bring themselves to burning these like old icons that they had when they were just in a shack. But they're so old and tattered, they're just horrible, but they're special to them. But they also can't give them away. You know, so anyway, yeah. Okay. When a bishop has been accused of something by trustworthy men, he must be summoned by a bishop. Bishops. Okay, so the bishop is accused. He then has to go before the bishops. Goes on to say, and if he answers and confesses or is found guilty, let the penalty be fixed. That means they'll give them the penalty. And if, when summoned, he refuses to obey, like if he won't come, he refuses to obey, let them summon him a second time by sending 2 bishops to him. If even then he refuses to obey, let him be summoned a third time. 2 bishops again be sent to him. But if even then he shows contempt and fails to answer, let the synod decide the matter against him, whatever way seems best, so that it may not seem that he is getting the benefit of evading the trial. So it is bad. If he's summoned and he doesn't go, and he's summoned again and he doesn't go, and if he doesn't go finally the third time, they're just going to make the decision, and it's probably not going to go good because obviously the optics are horrible. I mean, sorry, you're not going. It's just, they're so horrible. Okay. As a witness against a bishop, no heretic shall be accepted. Sorry, heretics. You can't, you know, charge the bishop. But neither shall one faithful alone, for every charge shall be established by the mouth of 2 or 3. So they won't accept heretics, and they also won't accept just one person's charge against a bishop. It has to be several. 76. If it is decreed that no bishop shall be allowed to ordain whomsoever he wishes to the office of the episcopate as a matter of conscience, concession to a brother or a son or a relative. For it is not right for heirs to the episcopate to be created by subjecting God's things to human passions. For God's church ought not to be entrusted to heirs. If anyone shall do this, let the ordination remain invalid and void, and let the bishop himself be penanced with excommunication. So this is in the day again when people could get married and they could have sons and stuff, that they might want to set up a whole bunch of bishops. Bishop Stephen, and then Bishop Stephen sets up his 7 sons as other bishops, so then he gets real great control. No, this is not allowed. And if that happens, then he is excommunicated. Though this is interesting, in the Latins, after they left the church, this happened all the time, even though their bishops were unmarried. They would have cousins and nephews and family members that they would choose to like fill the role. And you can see this in the histories of the popes at the highest level. It's pretty well documented. Okay, number 77. If any cripple or anyone with a defect in any eye or in a leg is worthy of the episcopate, let him be made a bishop. For it is not an injury to the body that defiles one, but the pollution of the soul. Okay, so if somebody has something that they're just a natural defect in their body, they can still serve, except for this. 78, let no one that is deaf, nor anyone that is blind be made a bishop, not on the grounds that he is deficient morally, but lest he should be embarrassed in the exercise of the ecclesiastical function. He just cannot, he cannot,
You won't be able to like serve.
um, yeah. So it's not that the church is against blind people or deaf people. They just can't serve. Like literally, they just can't. So you have to be able to hear. 79, if anyone is possessed by a demon, let him not be made a clergyman, nor even be allowed to pray in company with the faithful. But after he has been cleansed thereof, let him be received, and if worthy, be made one. So if somebody is possessed, obviously, they should not be made into a clergyman. Once that person is healed and cleansed of the possession that the demon had of them, and they've proven themselves to stay without being possessed again, then they could be cleared to do this. But the greater lesson here is that Christians can be possessed. Okay, this too is in America. I wonder how many of our Orthodox Christians kind of presume that they can't be possessed because of the influence of the evangelicals. Evangelical Protestants do not believe if you're saved that you can be possessed. It's just not true. If you open yourselves up to the demons, I'm sorry, you will let them in. So be careful. Oh, be careful, little eyes, what you see. Oh, be careful, little ears, what you hear. It's true that the Father up above is looking down with love, but the demons who travel around here also see what your eyes are seeing and your ears hearing. And their Father in Hades is also watching and seeking whom he may devour. So be really careful. You do not want to find yourself possessed, dear ones. What a horrible thing. It is not right to ordain a man bishop immediately after he has joined the church and been baptized if he has hereafter been leading a heathenish life. Hitherto, if he has been living a heathenish life, or has been converted from wicked behavior. For it is wrong to let one who without experience become a teacher of others, unless in some special cases this be allowed in the matter of divine favor and grace. So in most cases, he's just not going to be a teacher. Okay, 81. We're close, guys. We're close. The 85 canons. We're so close. And I have 30 seconds to get all of them done. No, we started late. Remember, always when we start late, then my starting time is reset to 2 hours. So it's always great. Since you guys were 5 minutes late to get here and we get to start 5 minutes late. Okay. I was driving. Not my fault. Okay. We have 81. We have said that the bishop or a presbyter must not descend himself into public office, but must attend to ecclesiastical needs. Either let him be persuaded therefore not to do so, or let him be deposed. For no one can serve two masters, according to the Lord's injunction. So listen, if you're a bishop or a priest, you cannot serve in political office, period. And if you want to serve in political office, then you have to step down from the office of the clergy. 82, we do not permit house servants to be ordained to the clergy without the consent of their masters. to the sorrow of their masters owning them. For such a thing causes an upheaval in the household. But if any house servant should appear to be worthy to be ordained to any rank, as our own Onesimus did, and their masters are willing to permit it and grant them their freedom by liberating them from slavery and allowing them to leave their home, let him be so ordained. So there you go. You see this principle of obedience all the way to the very beginning. And the apostles submitting to the owners of the slaves. Isn't that amazing? Okay, 83. If any bishop or presbyter or deacon is engaged in military matters and wishes to hold both a Roman citizen, Roman office or a sacerdotal office, let him be deposed. For render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and unto God the things that are God. You cannot be a military man and be in the service as a clergyman. Okay, this is something that is really horrible in our day because the government of the United States forces all of the priests to become enlisted. This canon is broke all the time, and we need to do something as clergy to convey to the government if they would allow the Orthodox priest to not be enlisted as some sort of a serviceman so that we can still be priests with our troops without having to be enlisted ourselves, because it's just straight up against what the apostles taught. And some people explain it away. Well, you don't ever have to pick up an arm, or you don't have to do this, but you still are forced to come in to the office. You become an officer. I mean, like chaplains are officers. In most instances, unless I'm confused, and I could be confused, but it doesn't matter. They're enlisted. 84, two more to go. If anyone insults an emperor or a king or any other ruler contrary to what is right and just, let him pay the penalty. Accordingly, if he is a clergyman, let him be deposed. If he is a layman, let him be excommunicated. Dear ones, do not mock and jeer and trash your governmental authorities, as lousy and horrible as they could be. We just have to be above the bar. We just have to do it. It's really hard. And praise God that nobody's around policing us all the time, because how many of us would be deposed or excommunicated or talking bad about our authorities? But we need to re-up our dedication to our bridegroom and never speak ill of anyone. Christ says, don't speak evil of anyone. Okay, 85. Here's the one that everybody's been waiting for a couple of reasons. To all you clergymen and laymen, let the following books be venerable and sacred. Of the Old Testament, the 5 books of Moses, namely Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. The one of Jesus of Nave, commonly called Joshua in English. The one of Judges, the one of Ruth, the 4 of the kingdoms, 2 paralipomanim of the books of the days, which are like the Chronicles, 2 of Esther, or Esdras, 1 of Esther, 3 of the Maccabees, 1 of Job, 1 Psalms, 3 of Solomon, namely Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Song of Solomon, 12 of the prophets, 1 of Isaiah, 1 of Jeremiah, 1 of Ezekiel, 1 of Daniel, 1 outside of these. It is permissible for you to recount additional thereto also the wisdom of the very learned Sirach. So this is the wisdom of Sirach, by way of the teaching of your younger folks. Yes, we're going to teach the young folks. Maybe we will have a Zoom class with all of the young folks so they can learn the wisdom of Sirach. He goes on to say, our own books, that is to say, those of the New Testament comprising the 4 Gospels, namely Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, 4 epistles of Paul, 2 epistles of Peter, 3 epistles of John, 1 of James, 1 of Jude, 2 epistles of Clement, and the injunctions addressed to you bishops through me, Clement, in 8 books, which ought not to be divulged to all on account of the sacred matters, which is the apostolic constitutions. That's what he's talking to about. So here he says also the 2 epistles of Clement and the apostolic constitutions, which Clement wrote down at the behest of the apostles that spoke to them, and then the Acts of the Apostles. Isn't that amazing? And what is even better, dear ones, is that next week we get to start the apostolic constitutions. And it makes me so happy. So actually, I was wrong earlier in this lesson when I said in the 85 canons, it says that you should not read anything else. It's actually in the apostolic constitutions where it's at. It's in book 1, and we'll find it. So if anybody has anything else, any questions, any thoughts, any
Quick
controversies?
question. Quick question, Father, about the candles in the church. Heather and I, or Anna and I, were both horrified. Anna and I were both horrified just a second ago when you talked about the candles not leaving the church. We had the little candles from our baptism, and we had little pieces
Your
left.
baptismal candles actually can go. Those are
Okay.
actually supposed to go with you, and then they're buried with you in the church. So don't burn them at home. Don't
No, we
burn
put them in a baggie with our
Mhm.
robes. So
Mhm.
Okay, just
Yep.
making sure.
Yep. No, that's a great question. Yeah, make a great question. Put that in a bag with your robe so that when you die and we bury you, we can put them with you, with your crowns also. And that's what we need to do next for you, is a crowning, a wedding crowning. But yeah,
thank you, Father.
okay. Anything else? Dear ones, forgive me. Sometimes I get jokey and sometimes I talk too much, and it's a sin, and I'm sorry if I said anything that was offensive. I wish that I wouldn't have. And I can't tell you how many times I come home from class and then I just think, oh no, I hope I didn't cause anybody to stumble. So please forgive me if I have said anything that is hurtful or seems presumptuous or seems arrogant or boastful. I try not to. I'm not trying to be arrogant, but I am not humble like I need to be. And sometimes this just comes out. So if you forgive me, I beg your forgiveness and I appreciate it. So, with that, let's close in prayer. God, have mercy on us.